Welcome to Warblog. Today we are looking at North Hajjah, Yemen. It's quite a simple setup. Probably worth bearing the original sort of reference in mind, which is this sort of south front thing, and you can see it here. No. Okay, so I'm not used to seeing adverts. So they're obviously Saudi Arabia, and there's go away. And there's Harad. And what they're trying to do, according to the article, forces of the Saudi-UAE coalition have kicked off an effort to encircle and retake the town of Harad. They're trying to encircle it, so presumably that means coming this way and possibly this way, but that's the situation. So that's what we got. That's what we've got there. So we'll just get into play mode. So let's have a look. So following on, from that, the sort of pocket looks a bit like that, and this is the Amman triangle, and they're trying to sort of push this way and this way, presumably with a notion to encircle them. So they could be pushing this way, but they haven't explicitly stated that. So now I put the hill line sort of there. I mean, it's just sort of fallen there. It's always quite hard to sort of determine exactly where certain features like hills and woods and start and finish, because when you look at these things on Google Maps, you can't really see the terrain particularly clearly. You know, lots of hills look like maybe undulating desert, look like, you know, mountains. So that's what we got. So it could be that this is a defining feature, but in this game it is. But it could be that the hills actually come a lot further west. But we can play with what we got. Now, to be quite honest, I don't know what the setup is. When I set it up, I thought, well, the Houthis really don't stand a chance. So you've got to sort of define the objectives in sort of relatively to sort of what you're trying to achieve. So what I'm trying to say, you could probably just pounce anywhere and you'll win in lots of places. I just wish I could stop these things from popping up on my screen. If there's one thing that annoys me, it's that, you know, I just seem to get a lot of it. There must be a way. I'll have to figure it out. So now essentially what we got are some Saudi forces here and some UAE forces here. And now these are only here just because I put them there. Now they might sort of come down here, etc., and they might try and push this, or they might sort of try and come up this way. The only thing maybe I need to look at this. There doesn't seem to be a crossing over here. So there might be one. Let me have a quick look on this map. So you can hardly even see the river. That's the river. There doesn't seem to be too much, although there's probably a crossing point there, but we don't go that far. So there's probably a crossing point there. So that's quite interesting. Presumably you could put some engineers in there and bridge it or push this way. But what I'm trying to maybe get to is when you define your sort of victory objectives, etc., the thing to do might be to sort of define one operation. I've done this. I've gone through this process before, but obviously you've probably seen a lot of the other videos. But it seems quite an interesting way to do it, especially when you've got big games, because it can take a long time to do one turn. And so obviously you've got to think about my little laptop here. I can't get the whole screen in, but you might want to sort of say, well, obviously you could push from every front. You could use these units to push here. Now the thing is, these threes aren't really up to much, so then there's not really a particular sort of, there's no strength there, and there's no sort of point force. Also, these are sort of here moreover because it's Saudi Arabia. So what I would say with these is that you can't use them because it's Saudi Arabia. So you can only use the Hadi forces, the active Saudi forces, and the UAE forces. But you would have certain objectives. So, okay, well, what we're going to do first is take this, which is defined on this map as the Amman Triangle, as we've already mentioned. So you might sort of say, oh, I want to take the Amman Triangle. Now, it's not an objective because that's the objective, but it looks as though that's what they're doing. So you might want to sort of say, well, okay, well, how can I do that? I just pressed end turn. Okay, right, not to worry. You might sort of, how can I do that? Well, you can I mean, now the thing to bear in mind here is that they don't have large forces. So there's two in there, one there, and one there. So it shouldn't be that difficult. I mean, we've got 12 there. I mean, they could probably move up here and take that. Now, they'd be worth 2, so that would be a 6-1. But with these, they could easily get 7-1s against all of this. And it is something that I've sort of thought about, actually. I'm not sure whether or not because I thought I don't know why that's there. I thought I'd put a bit more artillery in just so that you could sort of deal with that, because there's really not much you can do against these big stacks. But if they leave anything, and this is what's sort of happening in the Yemen war, these little irregular units, they're picking out small targets like that and attacking them, but they can't fight these big forces. But the thing is, what I'm trying to get to is you define your success by defining an attack and winning it, and then holding it and keeping that line. So obviously you probably want to keep Harad and somehow secure this border here, because if you send everything up there, then this flank will become quite weak, etc., etc. But so the first thing to do would really be to sort of determine how you could do that. So I mean, you could go for this, but they'd be worth 2 and you'd be worth 6. So that would be a 3-1, and then you could be attacked by this irregular unit. Although if you're stacked up, that would be quite open. That would be quite defendable. But then that would be open, leaving this unit to come down here and do whatever it wanted. So this is really all a defensive line. It's really, just down to sort of how are we going to take that, and then define how that affects moving up to Harad. Yeah. So, I mean, the thing is, I think in the first instance, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just take this hex here. That's what I'm going to aim for. And what I was saying before, you could sort of play the game in the sense that you say, okay, this is my operation for this turn. I'm just going to move here and take that. Now everything else is going to remain static, because in this sort of this war, things are happening bit by bit. You know, there isn't really a sort of a huge ongoing frontal drive like in the Eastern Front 1944, etc., etc. Whenever that was in the Second World War, you know, sort of massive, extended, vast resource, symmetric warfare. You know, they seem to be sort of picking their objectives and making sure they win. So this is what I'm sort of, when I started this, I sort of, you know, really wanted to sort of possibly emphasize that a little, because it's not the sort of titanic epic that it appears to be. Oh, we'll send these forces this way. I mean, you could play it like that, and that would be playing it directly as it is in that sense. Whereas if you sort of think about, you know, the actual strategy that's going on, then you'd play it differently, and that's what we're going to do here. So I'm going to sort of think about my resources here. So what I want to do is I'm going to move these two guys here. Now that just keeps them sort of on the front. I mean, we've got artillery there. What I was saying is I think these guys need a bit more artillery. They've got one there. No, I thought I'd given them more artillery, because the artillery is the only thing that's really going to give them the sort of the edge against these big stacks. I mean, not an edge, but the ability to sort of counterattack. In fact, I think I've forgotten to do that. I put in one with the idea of duplicating it, but the fact that there aren't any other artillery units indicates that I forgot to do that. Basically, I was going to put them sort of along here or here, so that they can, you know, they can, because otherwise the coalition forces could just take its time, just move one stack at a time, completely, almost relatively invincible. You'd need 6 of these just to get a 1-to-1. So we're going to go up the road here. I mean, is there any point in even trying with the artillery? Okay, well, we've still got all of this, so we might as well That's interesting, really, because they're all going to have to fight, because at the moment they've got a negative because they're in a zone of control. It's one of the things that hasn't sort of happened. They're in a zone of control, so they can't move unless they go into combat and win the combat, in which case whatever movement they've got left becomes usable again. So if I was to not use him, it would be stupid, because he wouldn't be able to move afterwards. He would be able to attack this stack, but I don't want to do it like that. So I'm just going to commit them all, but this is going to be... I don't know, actually. I mean, we've got these obstacles. Let's see how much that actually comes out at. 4-to-1. So not brilliant, but not bad either. So we've now opened up the road to Ammon Triangle. Now if we move into there, we'll lose all our movement. So what have we actually got? 2.4. Well, I'm going to make sure I've got everything in there. Okay. Now, do I want to do anything with that? Not really. And now the question is, what do I want to do with this? I'm tempted to sort of bring it... I should use this. Bring it down this way to join it. But at the same time, I'm thinking, well, why? Why don't I just drive it straight through here? Or straight across this way and then up. See, because the thing is, it's strange, really, because when you sort of look and think about this situation in Yemen at the moment and apply it in this sort of context and format, you've got two choices. You can sort of say, okay, well, what are these? Maybe I should give them 1, 2, 3s units to give them a bit more defence, because there's nothing there. They could just walk straight through that. But the reason they're not is presumably because they've got some sort of effective firepower, some capability that will harass them on the way, whereas I don't see that in this hex game. I could just drive straight through here, but there is something. Now, to make it that something, I'd have to give them really big forces, and they don't have those. I mean, these are basically, I've seen some of these videos, they're just people, they almost seem to be wandering around. Presumably they've got some sort of motorised transport somewhere in the pipeline, but they're not a sort of regular army in any sense. They just seem to be very irregular, going around in bands of, say, 20, and sometimes with sort of rocket support, mortar support, but really just sort of firing, light machine guns and machine guns, medium machine guns, and doing that. And to some extent, you wonder why there's any resistance, because you'd only need a fairly sizable number of units. I mean, this would be a 3-to-1 against this if they weren't dug in or entrenched. And you could just sort of roll over. I mean, it's one of the things that I think Safi in Syria, they're still fighting over it. This is at least a couple of months ago since I did that scenario, and where ISIS are held up in a volcano of all things. There's nothing there. You just sort of think, well, why haven't they just moved forward with their, APCs, tanks with infantry support? Because these people don't. There's no food. There's no water. They're completely surrounded, and yet they're putting up some kind of defence that's suitable against APCs. I mean, they can't have endless amounts of RPGs or anti-tank missiles, and I don't know, it just seems to me that there's some things that are difficult to reflect, that this very sort of sporadic or sparsely defended line, what's stopping them from just moving straight through it. Now here we might find out a little more about that. Now, we've done this sort of move here, and we're talking about what we're going to do there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just bring them down. That's what I didn't want to do. Okay. Okay, so they're moving that way. I'm not going to do anything there. Now we've got air power. So what I'm going to do with that is I'm going to harass these units. There's a nice big stack. Got one bit of air defense, quarter strength, half strength. Okay. 2.8. Okay. Well, here's the sort of the response. And again, it's sort of, well, what is it that's actually giving them this sort of perimeter? There doesn't seem to be any sort of rationale for that sort of line. It's not hills, it's not towns. They just seem to be sort of maybe forming a defence around Harad here. It's Harad, isn't it? Harad. But here there's something that they're being pushed. So I think the question is, what can they do about that? Well, as I said, I'm going to put more artillery in because I clearly haven't done that. I'm going to put quite a bit in as well to really make it kind of difficult for them to just relax and take the pace as they want. And this stack may be, powerful, but if we get artillery on them, move through the hills, not along the track. Okay, so we can hopefully hit them with some artillery. Well, that's quite good, and it's stuff like that that is, I think, an important factor into maybe understanding why they don't move forward as quickly as they could. Now, it's an artillery unit, but it could be just mortars or rockets, and the effect could be, as much as anything else, just pinning them down. I'm not going to bother with anything else, although I think I'm going to move him there. These will all stay up there. Now, the thing I like about this line is that it is actually quite balanced because we can't really attack them because they're dug in. If they were not dug in, we'd have at least the ability to attack them, but they can't really attack us either. So, and we could move through there and get that artillery, but I don't like to do that really. It's sort of, it doesn't make a lot of sense. So we'll end that turn. Well, I didn't do anything with Ammon triangle. So, I'm quite tired actually, as ever. So I'm not thinking as clearly as I should be. So we just move in there. And okay, well we might as well. Got air power. I'll use the air power later. We're going to win here. That was right. 6, 12. That's about right. Of course, because some of these are depressed, aren't they? Okay, so we'll push them back in the wrong direction. Why are they that colour? Oh no, they move there. These are. I thought something had gone wrong there. Considering they're so tough, here's my air power here. I really want to take that out. Half strength. Well, they're at half there, which is quite interesting because we've got some movement here. Can we exploit? Look at that. An exchange. Well, I'd like to attack that, but they're going to be quite tough. They're going to be 4. So that'll be 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. That'll be a 3 to 1. Oh, let's just go for it. 4 to 1 on a DE. Okay, let's push this line forward a bit here. Okay. So that's that. Zero damage. Okay. Well, that's that. So I'm going to just analyse this. I'm not going to play it anymore. I got these things, but just sort of analysing the situation now. I mean, we had something unexpected, and that was this sort of this rapid advance up this road to Harad. Now we've got these units. It's not worth much. 6, 6, 3, 2. Question is, can they do anything against all of this armour? And is there anything down here that's exposed? Now this is exposed. That's sort of exposed, but it's not really part of the fighting force. So the thing is, what would they do? Would they sort of fall back to try and maintain an organic line of defence, you know, to respond to that across there from there, which is obviously where they were, and they've now lost that to that. So the question is, to some extent, can they deal with that in any way and form that organic line there back? So let's don't think we can get any odds against that. Although they do have a depression. Let's see what we can do with this. 0.4. They're going to be worth, let's say 5 for sake of argument. 1, 2, 3, 4. We could probably get a 1-to-1 against them. We need 6 units. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We could possibly do something. And that's it. And now this is one of those crap shots in the sense that I'm not sure they would do that. But I think the thing that I'm trying to sort of back up on that is that they would possibly try to push their line organically back in this direction. Can't get any. Oh, we can get 2. Yeah. So what we've now done is repair our line. I'm not convinced that there's sort of the merit of this strategy, but I'm just sort of doing it like that. With now this isolated. And although they can't take part in the battle, they can stop the retreat. So let's just see how that works. They only need a DR. Now if these are less than 5, which I doubt, which they are, it took me a while to figure that out, but that wasn't so bad. But that was their opportunity. They rolled a 9, and that's that. So I'm going to leave it at that because I don't want to speak for too long. It's definitely interesting, but I think it's one of these things where you've really still got to take things one step at a time and look at your objectives. Now, the thing that I sort of, it's all fair play in the sense that it's a game, but I sort of was a bit impetuous sending these units up here because I saw an opportunity. And I'm on video, so I don't really have time to sort of think. It's not competitive. I was sort of thinking, well, was that a good move? I mean, obviously in the sense of tactically or even strategically, but was it a good move in the sense that did I even think about it? Or, you know, they are still fairly tough, but they could have lost all those units. You know, that, and so what I'm saying is that was probably a failure in the command-wise, in a command sense, because if you had done that and put yourself in that position, you'd probably being reprimanded. You know, even though that didn't happen, and it wasn't really sort of in the orders to sort of impetuously move forward. Really, all I was trying to do was to take out this triangle, the Ammon triangle. I think next turn, even at very worst, we were to fight our way out, probably quite happily. But you know, lessons learned really. It's quite interesting, and I think what would make it a little more interesting is considering the greater scope of the whole front, whether there could be anything else pushed in these ways. You know, whether these units could do anything, I don't think so. Whether you could do anything here, possibly, but we're leaving these in Saudi Arabia. Whether these UAE units could have pushed through here, probably, but that wasn't the spec. So there's lots of potential and possibility. Yeah, so I'll leave it at that. If you want to play this yourself, you can sign up. You can do print and play. Play it remotely with your pals. Play it on your own. And have fun and learn. I'll speak to you later. Cheerio.